Walt Stewart, and I was born in 1940, and we lived in the west end of New Albany, Indiana. And my childhood, it couldn't have been any better. My dad was a fireman. My mother was a homebody and had clean clothes, good food on the table.
Excellent food.
What could have been any better than that? And so my childhood was unbelievable. And I think about the kids that are growing up now and having problems. If they'd had a mother like mine, they wouldn't have had any problems. so that's.
He was also the favorite son, and he has a sister,
Yeah,
and he has a brother,
yeah.
and they're totally different, all of them.
Well, my sister's a nurse. She's single, and she's part of the family, and we love her. And but she would be down here now, but she's back home. But she went to college, and neither one of us did. So.
And my first name is Elizabeth, and it's Elizabeth Carol Stewart now. My maiden name is Thomas. I had an aunt and an uncle that were very prominent in my life, in that I inherited her name in not the same order, and he was Dr. I forgot his name, Dr. Carroll, Dr. Owen Carroll. They lived in Newcastle, Kentucky, and that's where I was born. And my mother grew up there, and she's Elizabeth Duncan Thomas. And everybody loved her. She was such a sweetheart. She died in January of 2011. But when I went to where she was in the nursing home, I got hugs all the way in, telling me how wonderful my mother was. And mother always said when they were having a bad day, they would come into her room, and she called them her angels. So that's kind of sweet mother I had. My dad grew up in Newcastle also, and I was his second daughter. He had his first marriage, and that didn't go well, and then he married my mom, and there was Carol and Lucy and Johnny and Larry and Steve and Susan. So we had a big family, and we didn't have a car to ride in for years, and when we got it, we were just thrilled to death. But we grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and then we moved to, well, we were in Nashville, Tennessee first. Dad was with the Corps of Engineers, and when they began, and then we moved to Louisville, and then we moved to New Albany, Indiana, and I was going to be a freshman in high school, and I met a girl at the park named Judy, and she said, why don't you come with me to my church? We're going to have a hayride. And it was right before school started. So I went with Judy to the Methodist Youth hayride, and the most handsome young man was there. And I took one look at him, and wow. And this is my husband. So
well, when she invited me to go, I'm thinking, I've got allergies, a hayride, that just don't fit into my plan, And so we get there, and they introduced me to her, and I thought, whoa, maybe this allergy stuff's going to clear up now, So I saw her, and she was so pretty, and I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And so we started dating, and we always walked every place. I didn't have a car. We were young, and so we walked every place. Walked to ball games, And one night it was really cold, extremely cold, and I'm shy, and so we go to the ball game, and I've got my hands in my leather jacket back then. That was the style. So we're walking, and she says, "Walt, are your hands cold?" I said, "No, I'm good." She said, "Well, mine are." And she reached over and grabbed my hand out of the pocket, and I thought, Mom told me about girls like this, a hussy, And I think that's what I got. So we dated all through high school, and I'm a year older, and so I graduated, and I got a job. I'm working, and she graduates, and we decided to get married. So I went to ask her dad. I said, "I'd like to marry your daughter, Carol," and he got up and left the room. I thought, was that a yes or a no? He never did tell me. So we went ahead and got married anyhow. We got married in our Methodist church where we grew up, and it couldn't have been better. It's been
September 25th, 1959.
59, yeah.
And he was 19 years old 5 days before we got married.
And we went to Nashville on our honeymoon, where she grew up, partly. And it was just, it's been good.
Well, one of the things that happened is when the pastor, Reverend Thomas, it wasn't any kin to me, but he was a Baptist preacher at the church we went to, Methodist church, I'm sorry. And Walter gave him all of the
25 silver dollars.
They're heavy.
What would they be worth nowadays? Well, man.
But
that was my dad. He had given them to me. So.
Oh, and that was, I heard somebody crying in our wedding, and it was his father.
Yeah.
He was sobbing. So, and then when we had Amy, he was the happiest granddad you ever saw. But he liked to stretch her out. And I'm standing there, a new mom. I'm about to pass out.
That's your baby, so.
But I couldn't stop him. He was such a lovely man, and he passed away way too early from an accident when he went out on a fire alarm. And his life had been remarkable because way before I knew Walter, his dad made the paper because being a fireman, he would go in and rescue the children that were left in the buildings, and he rescued a lot of children. And it was just remarkable what he did. So
the best man at our wedding was Marvin Craig.
Yeah. And Leona.
Patrick.
Yeah.
And
we just lost touch of them from moving from one area to the,
But when we left and went on our honeymoon, we looked over to the side, and there was...
No, that was Jerry and
Jan. Jerry and
we
Jan.
had grown up with them, and...
But they were following us to Nashville. I thought, hope they're not going all the way with us. They need to turn around and go back.
Every time we turn around and look, there they were, still there.
driving right alongside us. So, but it's been good.
Yeah.
49 Hudson. I don't know if you know what a Hudson is. Okay. My dad was a mechanic on his off days from the fire department, and he worked on cars. And but there I was walking there a place, and he said, "What? You want a car?" And I said, "Yeah." Here I am, 16 years old, and never had a car. And he said, "How about that one out there?" I thought, "Holy cow!" He had a chain to a post. The guy hadn't paid him, so we got a limousine, and so that was our first car. And I traded it in, got a '53 Chevrolet, 4-door, and it was nice, you know. And then
That first one was so bad. If there was a bike behind you and you backed up, you would have driven over the top because you couldn't see out the back window.
So. But the next one was '59 Chevrolet, and I bought it new, and I mean, her styling then, you know. And
I found when we were moving, his dad had to make payments on that because he was underage to buy that car. And he had planned it out, the kind of car, the color, the paint, everything. And Papa had gone with him to order his car. So every payment we made, Papa had to sign for it because he was so young, and he did.
And
he
I worked the whole time.
And he paid for the car.
And but that was '59 Chevrolet, and it was sharp.
That's right.
We went to the drive-ins.
And the kids got to go to the root beer stand and get frosty root beer. They loved that. It's when it first came out. What else?
That's it. And we had started our family. Amy, the one she met, was the firstborn. And then we had Tracy and Deborah, and finally had a son. So, and he claims to be the favorite. So that's. But it's been so good, and well.
We've been blessed by God because our children are wonderful. Our daughter Debbie has had a very, very tough life. Her first child is now like 28 or 29, and he's very autistic. And he's a wonderful young man, but he has he doesn't talk very much, and that hurts his ability to communicate with people because he's so smart, but it's kind of locked up inside of him. And her second son was just fabulous. But 3 years ago, after a very wonderful, he just struggled through cancer for 3 years, and he finally died 3 years ago. But everybody loved Keaton McMurray. Everybody in Shelbyville, the little town in Kentucky where they live, knew Keaton. The school knew Keaton, and everybody was at his funeral. There were so many people at his funeral, they couldn't get into the church. And Keaton is still celebrated to this day because he was such a grand young man. And he has on YouTube, Keaton McMurray has his testimony to his love of the Lord. And anybody that sees it knows how authentic it was. And his goal was to live long enough from his cancer to baptize his girlfriend that he taught about the Lord and to take her to the prom. And he passed away before he got to do those things. But he did, Debbie did.
His girlfriend.
Debbie baptized his girlfriend at our church. And then Mom and Dad got to go pick up his graduation certificate from high school. But they'll never forget Keaton because he was just a one of a kind. And we have Tracy in St. Louis. Well, I'll back up. Amy is our first daughter, and she is married to a wonderful man named Tom. And he's prominent here in Evansville. They own a business here. And they have 2 sons, and they're in Massachusetts. And they love the cold up there. And then next is Tracy. And she's in St. Louis, and she has 5 children, and they are going to start having children. So, as they marry. And then we have Debbie, the one in Shelbyville, with Chase is still with her. And then we have Matthew, and he's with his wife, Sarah, and they live in Indianapolis with 2 adorable daughters. So we're so blessed, and it's just, I don't know the words to say how blessed we are.
Yeah. More than we could ever imagine.
Yeah.
But
your parents?
Yeah, my parents. We've all been touched by cancer, though. I've had it. Carol's had it. My mom died from it.
My sister died from it.
Sister died from it. And so, I mean, we've all been touched by it. And you just think, what an awful disease it is, you know. So, I worked for American Water. Indiana Cities at the time was the name of it. And about 40 years there. And my best friend was Sandy Dannenfelser. And we did it was a partnership work order, you know, and so I mean we had a good time, but we also got more work done than what you would think.
It was New Albany, Jeffersonville, and Clarksville that they covered.
But it was a good job. More than without an education, you know, I graduated high school and went to work. That was my thing, and been successful at it. So.
And I was a school secretary and a church secretary, and mostly just a mom who drove mega miles, transporting kids from elementary school to our house, back to their house, because we lived in a place that the school was far out, so you had to drive down country roads to get kids and to take them back home, but it was fun. And then we had Amy, and she has the 2 sons, and Tom is her husband. Then there's Tracy and her crew, and then there's Debbie and Chase is remaining, and then there's Matt with his 2 daughters in Indianapolis. So it's all of their stories are yet to be told. But Matt's daughters are so tall. From Matt's or his mother was 6 feet tall, and his grandmother was 6 feet tall. So Matt's girls have inherited long legs for young girls. And they're beautiful. Their mother is of American Japanese heritage, and they have the most gorgeous hair you ever saw. And they're just wonderful, smart young ladies. All of our grandchildren are just fabulous. Tracy has Taylor. Taylor's married to Mike Larson, and that's her first daughter. And then Brent, and he's married to Julia. And Julia and Brent are going to have a baby in May. We're excited about that. And then Tara is a nurse in the NICU in the town they live in Missouri. And then Brianna is still going to college. And Beth is still in high school. And then we have so many it's hard to keep track of. But after them, what have I left out?
That's all of them. Tracy,
Matt,
and Matt,
with the 2 girls in Indianapolis.
Did,
so they're great volleyball players. Everybody wants them on their team because there's really great players.
When you went to pick up the kids and the cow.
Oh, I had Tracy and her friend were in Floyd Central Drama, and they were in the production crew, so I had to transport them back to school late in the afternoon, and Floyd Central is in the county, so there's no street lights out there. And we went on this little country road in an old Volkswagen, and we went down, and all of a sudden I see something in my headlights, and I'm going like, oh no, that's a... And it was a bull standing out in the road. And I tried to stop, but I kind of hit it on the backside. And then I had to park my car and go tell somebody that their bull got out, and I probably killed it. I don't know where it was, but it did leave the evidence on the car.
It was full of it.
Oh, and I did get the girls to their production. They were supposed to be there helping with the production. But they still laugh about
the ride.
The ride, and the Volkswagen survived. So that was really exciting. Took a while to clean the car off too. And that bull might still be running. So the hardest part was going through with Debbie the death of her son. And it still is, you just can't imagine that he's gone. But I know Keaton is having the best time in heaven with the Lord. He loved the Lord, and he had taught his sweetheart. She never went to church, and he taught her all about the Bible, and all he wanted to do was to live and baptize her. And since he passed first, Debbie and Rod, or they baptized his girlfriend. And so that helped them in doing what he wanted to do. And it really is a beautiful thing. Just
but when we started having our children, I mean, each one of them were different in the way they acted, the way they presented themselves and all. But Amy, the one that's here with us, is she was the oldest, and I mean, she couldn't have been any better. And
Very responsible.
yeah, she was she was just good. And then Tracy came along. She had the wild side to her. You know, went through that wild stage. And she went out one night and it started storming and everything. Well, she'd been up behind our house in this lake, and all the kids
Man-made lake.
were up there with her. And so she come in, and I mean, I'm pretty upset. And she come in and she looked like a drowned rat, you know. I said, Tracy, put your keys on the table, go to bed. I'll talk to you in the morning. And Amy says, Dad, let's ground her. So that didn't happen. But I mean, they were all different. And Debbie presented another wild side for a while. And I mean, you expect them, you know, they're going to have fun. They're going to have stories to tell their kids what happened, you know. And our son, another good one. You know, he played basketball. And he waited for me to get home, and we played basketball together, and he was pretty good. And but come to find out, Mr. Perfect was in the back bedroom, and he'd wait till everybody went to bed, and then he'd climb out the window, and he had a car, and he'd back it down the road, never start the engine, and he'd go out and stay later. Well, being up past curfew was hurt his basketball, you know. So, but I didn't find that out till several years later.
We heard them laughing about it.
Yeah, they were all telling stories, and so that's a good thing. So it's been good. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know what I would say. As I grew older, or, you know, after high school, and I had my family, I knew that I needed help from the Lord to do a good job. We were young parents. I took pennies out of their little piggy banks some days to buy a loaf of bread. And in the early days when he was working, and I knew that we needed the Lord for our family, for our marriage to work, because you always have hard times in your marriage, and you need to know to hang in there and to learn if you need to change something, to change it, but to always work on your marriage, because that's what God intended for your children and for each other. So we're all sinners. We all do the wrong things, and hopefully we do a lot of the right things. So that's the one thing that I would tell everyone.
Well, yeah, it takes a lot of hard work on both sides to make it work, and I think we've done that.
Yeah.